We just gonna give it a minute, people. We've been chatting. They can't hear you, Kate, but we've been chatting. We've been talking about all the secrets. Just kidding. We're both not. We're both pretty early in A Light in the Flame. We know nothing. A few things. I know a few things. Yeah, I mean, technically that's what the public knows. So, like, we can say what the public knows. Public, question mark. I won't get into it, I promise. Someone will get on me. Oh, let me light my candle. For anyone wondering, I'm lighting a rose candle. I don't want to hear anything. It's not pine. I'm trying to save my pine candles. Did you see the context of that sentence? Oh. No comment. No comment. I don't even think I can necessarily say what I read, but I did. Well, I had to look, okay? I had to look for the one thing because yeah, okay. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and switch this over. Hopefully I probably should have, yep, I should have checked. Hold on. Oh, it worked, never mind. Okay, I was like, oh my gosh, you should have switched this over. Okay, now we're like, let me turn off the music. I haven't done this in like 3 weeks, I feel like. I don't know anymore. God, what book series are we on right now? I don't know. Hi. Oh, they can't hear you. Hold on. I forgot. Now they can hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, that was my bad. I know, we're already getting a good comment. I'll say, we can't hear Kate. I know. Okay, I fixed it. So this is what's so awesome about, I always love doing these lives with Kate because Kate is like the From Blood and Ash, A Shadow in the Ember expert, whereas I kind of get to ask all the fun questions, especially because this time around I have not had time to do like a full deep dive reread. Avery and I are knee deep in beach scenes and bloody t-shirts and Empire of Storms. So we really cannot, we don't have time. So this is perfect. I'm glad that we get to recap this. And then next week, for anyone wondering, we are doing like somewhat of a midnight party. It's not midnight, I should clarify, because it's Monday and listen, your girl's tired. But it's going to be I think it's like 8. I don't know. I have the details in Discord. So if you're not in Discord, you should join Discord because that's where I have all the fun details. Uh-oh, did your volume get messed up? Uh-oh. Oh, she's trying to figure it out.
Hold on.
It's okay.
I can't hear you now.
That's what I figured. Okay, well, we'll give Kate a minute. This has happened before, so I lost my hearing. Yeah. It's the dang AirPods. Okay, so how this is going to work tonight. So I'm going to actually go through my A Shadow in the Ember notes that are, by the way, on Patreon. So I'm going through those notes. That's what I'm reading right now. And then I'm also going to be going through the questions on Slido. If you go to slido.com, the code is Niktos. So that is all you need. And then when Kate gets back, we're going to totally like rev this up. But for the meantime, I'm going to pretty much recap this for you as fast as I possibly can. And then Kate and I are going to try and highlight as much as we can. I'm just going to let her know I'm recapping so she doesn't totally panic.
All right, I'm good.
Oh, perfect. I was like, I'm going to start the recap.
I don't know what happened, but I'm back.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Okay, so I am pulling up my notes. I know Kate is pulling up her notes. I will say, and what's funny is I remember this was a critique when this book came out, but it is still something I enjoy, which is the similarities between this book and From Blood and Ash. Because it's similar but different. Like, you feel like you know the world, but you don't. Mm-hmm. And I know some people critique that. I actually liked it. I mean, come on, they're related. Oh, this is a good time to bring up. I will be spoiling the War of Two Queens. I just flung a rubber band that broke in my face. I will be spoiling the War of Two Queens. So if you've not read that, by the way, you should probably read that before A Light in the Flame comes out. Just throwing that out there. Anyways, so big beats, I would say pretty much from chapters 1 through 18 are really kind of like, for anyone who remembers them from Blood and Ash, I'm just going to like recap those first 18 chapters pretty quick. That's basically your equivalent to Poppy and Hawk before they get on the road. Like, it's a lot of like background information. It's a lot of just them trying to get to know each other. And then you find out he's Nyktos, even though, spoiler alert, I don't think anyone was surprised by that. Were you?
No.
Didn't think so. Okay.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The second I saw him, I was like, that's him.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly go through the first 18 chapters. Kate, stop me if there's anything important I'm missing. Okay. Okay. So prologue is honestly one of my favorite things, which is the whole veiled maiden. Very similarly dressed as Poppy is, except I think Seraphina's outfit was more scandalous. If I remember, it was like see-through and like crazy, like white. If I remember, it wasn't as like covered as Poppy's was. But anyways, she's presented, and we find out about Satoria. Is that how you say her name? Satoria? Yeah? We're going to go with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Satoria.
Okay.
The one that goes off the cliff. Yep.
Yeah, so we learn about the legend, which is that the quote says, "I thought of the mortal Satoria, whom the steep bluffs had been named after. Legend claims she had been picking flowers along the cliffs and fell to her death after being frightened by a god." Obviously, we know at the end of this book that Seraphina is a reincarnation of Satoria, so just want to quickly highlight that. We learn a little bit about the Shadow Priestesses, and then Nyktos arrives, and then he rejects Seraphina. I just saw a misspelling in this. Yep. Okay. Chapter 1 is 3 years later, and we find out that essentially she's been presented in Nyktos Temple quite a few times, but every time he doesn't show up. And her family essentially views her as a disgrace, so her best thing is killing. She's essentially an assassin. I laugh. The quote says, "Aelin, is that you?" It's very true. There is a rot taking over the kingdom. Now all these things are funny to us because we've now read Played a Prisoner and all of this, but there's rot that's taken over the kingdom, and they are ruining crops. Also, Seraphina is getting headaches. Anything else important in that chapter? Mm-hmm. Oh, you want to go for it? Go for it. I have the hierarchy of gods.
I think that's everything.
Okay. Chapter 4, we see Seraphina and Holland train together, and then they have a bit of a heart-to-heart because she doesn't understand why she's training. We learn about Odetta, who is her nursemaid, who is she is about to die. Yeah, no, she hasn't kicked the bucket yet. And then her headaches continue to bother her. Going to chapter 9. Oh, that's what I did. I didn't do all the chapters. Way to go, Sarah. You only did the important ones. Proud of you. Going to chapter 9. So Sarah saves. Oh, did I miss something?
Can we do one in chapter 6 first?
Yes.
So in chapter 6 is when she goes into the house and there is I think she was like a seamstress or something.
Yes.
And she has been killed by those gods, right?
Yes.
And so based on the description, we can assume that this person turns into a craven or a vampire. I would lean craven.
Yeah, it felt more craven.
Totally sure.
I would agree. It felt more craven than vampire.
So, and we get that she smells like stale lilacs, like the scent of stale lilacs versus fresh lilacs. I feel like is important moving forward. And also that she had like a wing-looking burn mark on her face. Like it looked like she had wings.
Very similar to what, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on her name? Millie has, right? And like that type of burn?
Yes. And which I think is interesting because Kalam also has this. Kalam has a gold set of wings. And it's getting into a whole like Revenant versus something else conversation, which I feel like we can touch on once we get to the further down.
Got it. Okay, so going to chapter 9, this is when Sarah saves the Kiyu wolf from death. And it's a brown wolf. No, it says a shock of brown and red burst out from the foliage. So yeah, it's a brown and red wolf. It was a Kiyu wolf. She sees that it was struck, and then she uses the Ember of Life to bring it back to life. And she has been for those of you that don't remember, she was very wary about using her abilities because, they were something that she wasn't necessarily, she didn't want to anger the god of death was her whole thing about this, if I remember correctly. Like, she didn't want to upset him. But this is something that I think was explained in the War of Two Queens, that we find out Seraphina was the one that made the Wolven. It was not Nyktos, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she would have to be. So actually, that was one of my questions I put in my notes was, at what point does she ascend the first Wolven on purpose, or did she ascend this Wolven and we just don't know yet? Because at the end, she ascends Bele or whatever, and she didn't. She just was trying to bring her back.
Yes.
So if this Kiyu wolf actually died, is it now a Wolven, and we'll find out later, or will that be an intentional thing that we see in this book?
That's such a good point. Yeah, there's still so much mystery around the Wolven, and so I don't know. Yeah, it's a good point. Okay, so then she goes for a bit of a night swim in chapter 9, and this is at the lake as well. Okay, going to chapter 11. We put germs, whatever. We find out about those, which again we saw those in the Crown of Gilded Bones, and they were, to me, they're like golem type creatures essentially. Mm-hmm. So that's what we see in that one. We also learn a little bit in chapter 11 about the aging of gods, so like the significance of certain gods aging, basically. Going into chapter 12, she learns more information about the Shadowlands, and then he tells her that she reminds him of a flower that used to grow in the Shadowlands, which is a poppy. Mm-hmm. If anyone's wondering, it's a poppy. Okay. And then a really interesting quote is he says that there are 3 separate places in the Shadowlands. There's the Abyss. Then there is the Vale, which is the paradise for those worthy. And then there is Elysium. And we have been to Elysium. We have not been to the other locations. Okay, cool. I want to make sure I explain that right. And then there's also the City of Gods, which is a different location. So that was also explained in that chapter. Okay, moving to chapter 16. This is when we see Callum and Ector for the first time. Now, what's really funny about Ector is I just like, what's his name From Blood and Ash? Why am I blanking on his name? The Wolven that was older that we ended up killing.
Alistair?
Yeah. I thought he was good. Everyone was the one that told me he was bad, and I was like, oh, you guys are right. I feel the same vibes with this Ector guy. I thought he was good, and then y'all corrected me.
Well, so I think it's because at the end, it's like he killed that guy before he could give a response at the end.
Right.
So that's why it was like a question mark. I also feel like just in general, just in the way that Nyktos interacts with him, it seems like he kind of gives him tasks in a way that he doesn't with like other guys. He like made him like stand outside her room. He like made him deliver the dagger.
Yes.
Like he played babysitter. And like, it almost feels like he's kind of like also in trouble for some reason.
Yeah, like he doesn't fully trust him.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. Yeah,
versus like the other guys just like do whatever. It feels like he's like actually
especially once you get into the Shadowlands. You're right. It does feel like everyone has free reign of the location.
Yeah,
interesting. Okay, so chapter 16 has we put in a massive paragraph about Callum, so you can read that on your own. I'm going to skip it. And then there's also a similar one for Ector. Going to chapter 17. So this is when we learn more about Satoria and the Rite. the rite is different, and someone had asked this in Slido. The difference between the rite in Now versus the rite in From Blood and Ash. So essentially, what you should know is everything that happens in this series is like the true version, and then essentially in Poppy and Hawk and From Blood and Ash, that is like the modified, manipulated version of it.
I mean, both are still a bit of a manipulation, though, because right now they're quote unquote taking these chosen and ascending them, but being that there's no ember of like primal of life, they're actually just being taken and being like used by the gods in not nice ways. But in terms of like ascending them, we don't actually see any mortals ascended in this book, which is important because we learn with like the revenants later, like there's a certain level of, if you do it with the right ones, you end up with revenants. If you do it wrong, it's not great, but
okay. Again, in chapter 17, she wakes up with another headache. This is all leading up to the fact that she is going to have to ascend or /die. So, then we get to Colus's arrival. And he doesn't see her, but she sees him, basically. So he feels her presence, but he doesn't physically see her, basically. Going to chapter 18. So this is when Sarah saves Marisol for Ezra. So Ezra is her stepsister. Mm-hmm. And she has a lover named Marisol. And something happens to her, and so she uses her Ember of Life to save her. And basically, when she does it, she makes it very clear that, like, you can't tell anyone that I did this, but I'm doing this for you because I care for you, basically. And then chapter 20, which we skipped it, chapter 19, but my favorite part about chapter 19 is the fact that her awful stepbrother takes her, and this is what gets Nyktos to finally come and rescue her. So,
19 is probably like my favorite chapter.
Really?
Yeah, it gives like the whole like right night of From Blood and Ash.
Yeah.
It's just that like first like really climactic moment.
Yeah.
And then like also her first like moment of like revenge.
Yes.
Which I love.
Yeah. So chapter 20 is when Nyktos arrives. He has an incredible entrance, probably, in my opinion, one of the better entrances in her series. Like, it's just really good. And Scion is also with him. This is, okay, so I don't know if anyone else felt this way, but I have felt this way about a few books, and I think JLA does a great job of this. When I read, the first time this happened was when I read A Court of Mist and Fury. It was like, you're kind of like figuring it out. Like I remember starting that book and being like, okay, whatever. Then when you meet the inner circle, it's like the whole room opens up and you're like, oh my God, this is what everyone's obsessed about. Same thing happened in From Blood and Ash when I met Kieran and all the Wolven. It was like, oh my, this is what we've been missing? Like, what in the world? And in this moment, it's the same feeling. Because when you start to see the banter with Nyktos' friends, it just, it was nice. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just had to do that. Oh, and then we have a who did this to you moment. So good. So good. So good. And then she has some really great moments about killing her brother. So that was pretty awesome. Okay, chapter 23. This is when she discovers that Nyktos can taste emotions. So that's pretty important. And this is, for anyone who has read it, I think the first 5 chapters are up. So you can technically go read those chapters. The only thing I'm going to say about that is it's brought up again that he can read emotions. I do know that. So, and he can taste it.
I will say in chapter 22 is when we meet the Draken.
Yes.
And he has 4 Draken that protect him. And there's like a general rule that Draken aren't supposed to attack other primals. Question mark. And then also where he lives is called the House of Hades, and he lives there by himself, and he has like a city called Leith where all his like subjects live.
So I don't know if you've looked, but I'm pretty sure if you open your A Light in the Flame book in the front, yes, there's a really cool map of it.
There's also a pronunciation guide in here.
I know. Isn't that fancy?
It's fancy. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, because it's Elysium. Love.
Yeah. So there's a really, I will say that for anyone who's, well, you'll get it also in your digital copies, but there is a great map in the front. Also, just want to quickly point out the cover art. Oh, we can show that part. The cover art, like the chapter art, is so pretty.
Oh, it's so pretty. I literally just was sharing this. Let me go to the first page.
Yeah.
It's like the Draken like flying around his castle.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It's really cool. Like it, yeah. So just a little side note. Okay, so then we go to chapter 25, and 25 is when we get a lot of information about the primals and what happens when they die. So there's a lot of like kind of back and forth. So like some of the questions she asks is like, why did your father ask for a consort? He says, I have asked that myself 1,000 times, because for those of you that don't remember, it was revealed and we learned that Nyctos's father loved his mother dearly. So it was a bit of a shock that he asked for a consort, because people just didn't think he would get married. They, he truly loved his wife. And she had died tragically to save Nyktos. So then there is, then they're asking, some other questions. They talk about godlings. They say the offspring of a mortal and a god. If a godling has a child with a mortal, then that child would carry some mark of them, but they would not be a godling. So this is where I get a little confused, because we find out in the War of Two Queens, well, I guess it's not confusing, but it kind of is, because we found out in the War of Two Queens, like, Poppy was never supposed to be born, because if there was a female child born in the line, I forget, something happens. It's like a bad thing.
She was able to get the Ember of Life, I think only transfers through the daughters, I think is what
that's what it is.
And then also like gods were not supposed to be born in the mortal realm. But in terms of godlings, we don't actually know any godlings to our knowledge in the From Blood and Ash world. They have what they call deities, which we still haven't yet to see. So I don't know what that's actually supposed to be. Yeah. We see like who they think are gods or who they think are primals are currently gods.
Right.
Which I think is leading to a god war. And then they talk about like a lot of godlings either don't end up getting past the culling. They die because they didn't get to drink god blood to keep going, or they do get through the culling, but they never have like immense power. They just like live a long time.
Right.
So there's like a range of power, and that power trickles down differently. Like if it's primal blood, that's why like Poppy ends up being so powerful, even though she's like primal part. It's weird because what's her face is a demi, and then it's like, well, question mark.
Right. Exactly. I think I now understand what Poppy is, but I also don't.
Poppy is everything. She's a primal of life and a primal of death.
That's what I thought, but it's like, but I think it's because of Seraphina has nothing to do with her mother.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I do understand that, right? Okay. Chapter 26. Sarah talks to the Draken and learns how they are bonded to Nyktos. So it says, all who reside are bonded to me, just as the Draken and the other courts are bonded to those primals. And then he talks about her anger. But I think the interesting thing is the Draken chose to bond with Nyktos. He did not require that. Whereas, and I also think the Draken within his realm have more freedom, whereas I feel like Colus's Draken do not have freedom, and that is something that is briefly discussed at the end of this book.
Yeah.
Cool. Yep. Okay. Chapter 27 is where we learn about what had happened to what we learn what happened to Nyktos' mother. So this is when we discover that my mother died because she loved my father, struck dead while I was still in her womb. That's why I'm called the Blessed One. No one knows how I survived that kind of birth. Love caused their deaths long before either of them had taken their final breaths, before my father ever met my mother. Love is a beautiful weapon, often wielded as a means to control another. It shouldn't be a weakness, but that is what it becomes, and those most innocent always pay for it. I've never seen anything good come from love.
Womp.
If you have read the first 3 chapters, that's a really important paragraph. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
He likes to say he can't love, that it's not possible. He says that multiple times.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, chapter 28. I forgot Avery titled this. Who cares? Rowan is saved. The important thing is Seraphine. It says Sarah.
That's
and it's
amazing.
It says Sarah. It's spelled like my name, and then it says Sarah Sera. Who cares? Rowan is saved. But the important thing, the reason I want to bring this up is this is the first time Sarah saves a life within the realm, and so that is what kind of strikes all the things coming out from under the ground.
Well, okay. So it's a little. So one, she didn't. It wasn't dead. This was the first time she's healed something.
That's true.
And then the stuff came out of the ground because she got scratched by the germ or whatever it's called. And she like had one drop goes down, and that's where all those gods were buried.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah. But I do also just want in my notes to bring up, I put Silverhawk ? Because there's a Silverhawk now, and then we see a Silverhawk in From Blood and Ash a couple times, like flying above Poppy. So I'm like, we don't, apart from the Draken, we still haven't seen any other beings that have been given like a human type form.
Yes.
And I'm like, what if she's gonna do it with all of these? Like, what if she like is about to turn like these hawks into one? They mentioned like cave cats, and then like they mentioned obviously the wolves. I'm like, this girl's about to have a freaking animal army.
Well, it's funny because so when we did the War of Two Queens, Jillian, who runs 1001 Dark Nights and Blue Box Prince, hi, we love you. She reached out and she was like, "Hey, do you have any questions for JLA?" And one of the questions I asked was about the Silver Hawk, and JLA answered it in the live, and she was kind of coy about it, but did say that there was importance to the hawk.
Yeah, it was only
watching
in the From Blood and Ash series, and I'm like, you said it more than once, so it means something. I don't know what it means yet, but
yes, because I'm almost positive. I know it is brought up in A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire when they're traveling. Mm-hmm. And I kind of agree. I don't know if you said it. Someone said it. I think it was you. Had said that you thought it might have been Colas.
Oh, I don't think it's Colas, but maybe. I mean, that, okay. Well, if we're going to talk about that, we also haven't yet seen a god turn into an animal, because they always like
that's true.
In Ash World, they thought Nyktos could turn into a wolf, but I think when they see that depiction, it's really actually Sarah,
right?
Like either representing her or what, because we actually haven't seen any gods or primals change form.
Yes, you have. Poppy's father.
Oh, you're right. But he's a cave cat.
But
we haven't seen that in any of the primals or whatever.
That's a good point.
We haven't seen that in this series yet.
That's a good point.
So where does that come from? How does this happen?
I do think Nyktos can turn into a wolf. I do think that. But I think he chose that form, and I don't know why. I don't know. It's a gut instinct.
Or it's Sarah doing it.
It could be Sarah.
So interested in animals. She really, like, she's so interested in saving all the animals and stuff. I feel like one day it's giving like a little bit like Lysandra. Like she like looks over and she's like, oh, there's this giant ass leopard. That's cool. And then just like turns herself into one. Like I feel like that's kind of what Sarah's going to do. One day Nyktos is going to like piss her off and she's going to be like, boom, I'm a wolf now. Like,
that would be kind of epic. I was actually reading the beginning of Empire of Storms, and I was trying to find something, and I love the line that where Adian goes, yeah, Lysandra has not been in her human form in days. I don't really blame her. I was like, yeah, exactly. Like, I agree. If I was Seraphina and I was like, you're boring me, I'm done. Like, I would turn into a wolf and leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, 29 is our mortal danger. So this is when she gets rescued, and well, Nyktos comes out and he's very annoyed because he was in a meeting and she went out into the forest and she wasn't supposed to. And she's also not really telling him the truth, which is the other elephant in the room. And then I believe it is, Scion is with her and she's like, I have fiery pain. Oh, I love a good mortal danger scene. And then she falls. Okay. We're skipping quite a bit from 29 going to 34. Is there anything important before I get to 34?
There's some spice.
Okay, that's probably why I skipped. Got it.
Yeah. 33 is well, I'm sure this is just before 34. I was probably what you're going to talk about is that there was a girl that had gone missing.
Yes.
And so 33 going into 34 is when she realizes that girl is dying and she feels the need to like save her.
Yes.
And it's like at the end of 33 is when she like goes and saves this chick. And then what is it? It's like Jadis.
Yeah.
Scion, Reaver, I think Ector's there, and they're like, "What in the world? You're glowing. What just happened?"
Yeah, so it says they all can feel it, is what it says.
Oh yeah, the Drakens were like trilling.
Yes,
they were yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they do. Yes, yes. And it just says Ash says you carry an ember of life, and then this is when she hears Sir Holland's voice in her that says this. It says, I don't understand. That was a ripple of power, Ash says. One hell of a ripple of power, one that will most likely be felt all through Elysium and many gods and primals. There was no doubt in my mind that others will come searching for the source. So this is kind of when things start to rev up. 35 is when we learn the truth about Sarah. So we learn about the deal that Nyktos' father made. And so essentially what that is that Nyktos' father, his brother Colas he switched the embers. So he basically he was originally the god of death and then switched with his brother to become the god of life. And Nyktos' father knew that this would be a problem, so he took the last bit of Ember of Life, which was in Nyktos, and gave it to the Seraphina's family. Yeah. And it would eventually travel through the line until Seraphina was born, and then I think his plan was to eventually transfer it back to Nyktos at that point, but...
Yeah, right? So I think the one thing... so Nyktos' dad's name is Ethos.
Yes, thank you.
He had a little bit of Ember, like a little bit left in him and a little bit in Nyktos. So she actually has like both of those tiny little embers. Mm-hmm. But also it was, I don't know if it's this chapter or later, but she like questions like, well, if your father is dead, why don't you just converse with him? And she said that it's because Colas actually has his like soul or whatever. Like yes. He has that. So I'm sure at some point we're going to see when they go and attack Colas or however that happens, that they're going to probably try to retrieve his father's like soul so that they can actually converse with him and figure out exactly what happened. Because even though they know they switched places, they don't know, like there's no one really knows how that happened or the details of it. Yes.
And then we learn the legend of Satoria. So basically, I'm going to read this as quick as I can. So Colas saw a young mortal woman gathering flowers for her sister's wedding or something along those lines. Her name was Satoria. She was the one that fell from the cliffs of sorrow. No one really knew if the legend of Satoria was even real. Bele says it is. And she says Colas watched her and supposedly fell in love right then and there. Either way, he was absolutely in love with her. So much so that he stepped out from the shadows of the trees to speak to her. Back then, mortals knew what the prime of death looked like. His features were captured in painting and sculptures. Satoria knew who he was when he approached. And then it says, and then she interrupts and says, I know what happened. He scared her. She ran to her death. He goes, he brought her back, didn't he? And he said, he did. How do you know? It's part of the legend. It's not the well-known part. No one knew it was Colas, but I hope that part wasn't true. And Ash says it is. And he says, Colas was distraught, somehow heartbroken. He called for his brother, summoning Ethos into the mortal realm. He begged him to give Satoria life, an act that Ethos could do and had done in the past. But my father had rules that governed when he granted life. One of them was that he would not take a soul from the veil. And he says, you see, the tradition of burning the body was to release the soul as a mortal one and act more to benefit of those left behind than those who have passed. He said, for most mortals, those who don't refuse to leave the mortal realm, like those in the Dark Elms, pass through the pillars of Asphodel rather quickly. A lot linger for a little bit, one reason or another. Although Satoria had died far too young and unexpectedly, she accepted her death, and when her soul arrived in the Shadowlands, it passed through the pillars and entered the veil within minutes of her death. She didn't linger. and my father would not take the soul from the veil. It was wrong, forbidden by both him and Colas, but Ethos tried to remind his brother that he agreed to never do something like that. When that failed, his father reminded him that it wasn't fair to grant life and then refuse it to another of equal worth. But I suppose that was one of my father's flaws. He believed he could decide when a person was worthy. Maybe there was some sort of innate ability, blah, blah, blah. Then he says, this is why he's never used my gift on the mortal until... blah, 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 blah. I didn't want that kind of a power. He goes on to say that. This is a lot of... So it says, Satori arose, and my father was warned. She was not the same, not evil or anything, but more morose or horrified by what had been done. When she died again, my father, he did something to ensure that his brother could never reach her, something that only the primal of death can do. With the aid of the primal Kila, he marked her soul. So it said they designated her soul for rebirth, meaning that Satoria's soul never enters the Shadowland and is continuously reborn upon death over and over. And she doesn't, it says her memories of her previous lives wouldn't be anything substantial if she had any at all, but Colas continues to look for her because of what my father and Keely did to mark her soul. She would be reborn in a shroud. Colas knows this. He still searches for her. So that is just, I know that was a bit of a long one, but I think it's important because obviously it's Seraphina, so, you know. And then we learn about his mother in this chapter as well, which I won't read that. We learn some more about Colas, which we obviously know, and then we find out about the poppies in this chapter as well, and that they are growing. They haven't grown there for hundreds of years. And then we learn the truth about the rot, that the rot is because of Colas and because the Ember of Life is non-existent. And that is all that chapter, which is a huge info jump. And then my next one is chapter 43. So anything before from 35 to 43?
I mean, there's the siege of the castle, which obviously, like, when all this information comes out, I think that dump chapter, obviously, like,
yeah,
that's when she realizes, like, they realize what her intent was.
Yeah.
And so that's where the, like, anger comes from. So she goes, like, during this siege, because they're obviously attacked because of the power she sent out.
Yeah.
But everyone's basically, like, hates her now. They're like, I can't believe you would do this. And it's like, okay, well, she was raised a certain way, and y'all been hiding stuff, so how's she supposed to know?
Yeah, exactly.
But, and then 38 is the feeding and doing scene. So if anyone's looking for that spicy scene, that's 38.
It's pretty good. And also, that's an important scene because he feeds from her, which then is what we discover at the end of the book and what that means.
He feeds from her, but she, like, gets, like, a drop from his thumb.
Yes.
Like a drop of blood from his thumb. Yeah.
It was an accident, basically.
I mean, I think he kind of stuck his finger in her mouth, but...
But it was an accident for his blood to get to her.
Yeah. I don't think she, like, was trying to drink.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So then chapter 43 is when Nyktos basically saves her from the whole situation. Right?
So 40 is where Hamid tries to kill Sarah. He was just like a godling that had like minimal power, but basically he found out from the girl she saved, like what happened, and he attacks her in the bath. And then because they're connected because of the blood thing, Nyktos realizes and comes up and saves her. Yep.
And then he also says that he will never hurt her, even though he feels very betrayed by her because the truth has been revealed about who she is. And then chapter 44 is about Bele and her ascension, which is basically she uses the Ember of Life to bring her back, but it ascends her.
Yeah, so there's also the victors in 44s. When we learn about victors, we learn about the fates.
Yes.
Holland is a fate.
Yes.
And we also meet goddess. Oh wait, that's 45. Is goddess Penelope.
Yes, we learn about. Yeah, I mean those are the two main things. And then we learn that the Ember of Life... We learn that the Ember of Life was purposefully put in Seraphina in this chapter. This is when we find out that is official. And then we also get Penelope's vision. And she says she sees cities forever laid to waste, kingdoms shattered and rebuilt, Great and terrible wars between kings, between queens, the forest of trees of color of blood, the redwoods, but in the mortal realm, full of death, stepped into the sins. And then she also sees her and them, a chosen and a descendant of the first, a queen of flesh and fire, and him, a king from blood and ash, who ruled side by side with man, and they felt right. They felt like hope. We all know who they are. And then we see this is the prophecy. So I will read it to you. So it says, from the desperation of golden crowns, born of mortal flesh, a great primal power rises as the air to the lands and seas, to the skies and all the realms, a shadow in the ember, a light in the flame, to become a fire in the flesh. When the stars fall from the right, the great mountains will crumble into the seas, and old bones raise their swords besides the gods. The false ones will be stripped from glory until two born of the same misdeeds, born of the same great primal power in the mortal realm. A first daughter with blood full of fire, fated for the once promised king. A second daughter with blood full of ash and ice, the other half of the future king. Together they will remake the realms and usher in the end. So, it's if for anyone who doesn't have a physical book, it literally takes up like a good chunk of your physical book. So, it's pretty crazy.
Well, that's not even the whole thing. There's still like 2 more sentences.
Oh, right. You're sorry. And so it will begin. We literally put in another paragraph. That's why. And so it will begin with the last chosen blood spill. The great conspirator, birthed from the flesh of fire of primals, will awaken as the harbinger and the bringer of death and destruction to the lands gifted by the gods. Beware, for the end will come to the west to destroy the east and lay waste to all which lies between. And that's it, is literally what it says. I think
it was a little longer than expected after the like 2 sentences we got.
Yeah. And I think what's crazy about it is just it's a lot of information, and there's a lot that goes into both A Shadow in the Ember and From Blood and Ash, so it's kind of a double whammy. Okay, all right, sorry. So then we see about the fates. We learned about the blood of Nyktos and how that has affected her. And then we notice this unexpected thread, because this is also when we find out that Seraphina has never made it past, I believe it's her 21st birthday. Isn't that correct?
22nd.
22nd birthday, thank you. She's never made it past her 22nd birthday, and she's inching close to it. It's like less than a year away. So this is, Nyktos also gets very upset in this scene. He's like, what do you mean? And she's like, oh, and we find out the only solution is love. That's it. That's the only solution.
She has to be loved by the primal of which she houses the Ember, and like
so it
only can be Nyktos.
It can only be Nyktos, yeah. And then we find all that out. We find out that Seraphina has many lives. We find out that she is officially the true primal of life, and that is how the book ends. Okay, so we recapped that pretty quickly. All right. I am going to go through some of the questions on Slido. So we did the rundown of the terms between Ascended and from Blood and Ash versus, I think the biggest thing is that some of these we don't necessarily have the correct answer to. So it's part of the thing. Okay, so I'm going to save the top question for at the end. So how do we feel about Nyktos in this book? How do you feel about him?
I mean, I feel good things. I like him.
I like Nyktos.
I like him more than Castile. I think that obviously at the end, like he's kind of hurt because this is like the first person he's actually cared about at all. Yeah. Which is like fair. But I know the next book is supposed to be really angsty, and I'm here for it. Like Nyktos is...
Angst is like my favorite thing. So like this is like part of the reason. It's funny, like sometimes when you get these books, you're like, I'm holding off. I'm purposefully holding off reading this because I want to sit down and like thoroughly enjoy it in one sitting. Like I don't want to break it up because an angsty book is like, oh, so good. So
yeah, and I think overall he's not really that morally gray. I feel like he's just perceived that way. I think he's actually just like a really good person. yeah,
like he's genuinely trying to just be a good person. Yeah, I would agree. Okay, what is the thing you're most looking forward to seeing in this book? A Light in the Flame. Well, the good news is both of us have only read what is been published, Like
I've only read I've only read the first chapter. I haven't even read the first 5.
Okay,
so.
then I won't. I read the first 5. This is the thing. Everyone's going to judge me for saying this, but I'm going to be honest. I want Serafina to get pregnant. I love a pregnancy trope, and I love a pregnancy trope when it causes drama. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I hope we see it in this book. If not, I'm hoping for some cameos of a certain diary-loving Willa Collins.
Yeah, so I was going to say the same thing. So I have this on, like, this is also like one of my crack theories that, well, one, I think we'll see Willa because she's supposed to be 2,000 years old. So in theory, she should be 1,000 years old right now.
Yes.
I think that she is the daughter of Holland and goddess Penelope. And I also, my crack theory is that she is the partner of the very first Atlantean.
Ooh, I love that.
Because the whole like creation, like the Heartmate trials, it was like when it came down to like when they finally gave in and did the Heartmate trials, they specifically said that it was because this woman had fallen in love with this guy and she was had many lovers in the past. And I was like, well, why would you add that if it's not about Willa frickin' Collins? Because who else do we know that has a lot of lovers? So I'm hoping we see her, and it probably not in this book, but maybe in the next book, we'll get to see the Heartmate trials and actually get to see the creation of Atlanteans. That would be super duper cool. Also, I mentioned to you before, but there was just like an offhanded comment about Draken, like, because Sarah was worried she was going to get like fed to Nectus or something. Yes. And they were like, well, would they actually eat someone? And they were like, well, they're hunters. They can eat like people and gods or whatever. Yeah. So I low-key want to see a Draken like bite someone in half. I think that would be freaking hilarious. And I'm here for it.
Yeah, no, 100% here for it.
Also just be because I watch like House of the Dragon and I'm like, just attack everyone. But.
Yeah, no, for real. I would agree. What do you think, what is your favorite theory that you have about A Light in the Flame?
My favorite theory? I mean, my favorite one's probably the Willa Collins one. But just like a general thought is, I mean, it's not like crazy theories. So one thing that I believe is that anytime we see stale lilacs, that's fake made stuff by Colas. And anytime we see fresh lilacs, it's something created actually by the Ember of Life. So anytime we see like Craven or certain Girms or the Rot or whatever, it smells like stale lilacs and it's all created. Same with like the Revenants.
Yes.
All of that. So I would like to actually see like that affirmed, that real Ember of Life is like fresh lilacs and like the fake stuff is stale. Because I've been saying that since like forever, for the last like 2 books.
Yeah.
So because it's definitely like I feel like that's important.
I would agree.
I would also like to see the Revenants more so, because they've talked about in this book specifically how a lot of the chosen have been taken and not seen again. And then the one girl that she brought back to life, she said she had seen them and they looked dead in their eyes, and they like their eyes were, so their eyes were black. Is like, are they going in vampires or Revenants? I think he's making both right now and collecting them to make
possibly
an army.
Yeah.
So I want to see that too.
I think my theory, I don't know. At this point, I'm not sure. I will probably know once I get farther into A Light in the Flame. I really hope we get to see the twins. I would like to see the twins. I would like to see the baby. That's basically...
For real. More than the epilogue. I agree with you. I would like to see the pregnancy now, because I was like, this is set up to actually be a time when you can do the pregnancy trope. And we know she has kids. Like, we know that happens. Yeah. I would like to see that too. But I'm thinking it's going to be in the epilogue of the 3rd book is when we're going to see them.
Yeah, I'm just saying, JLA, I'm here for a pregnancy trope.
Yeah.
I'm totally here for a pregnancy trope. So, especially in this series, I will happily take a pregnancy trope.
What if, like, we know they're going to get separated because every good fantasy series, they get separated.
Yes.
What if they're, like, separated and she gets, like, taken by Colas and she, like, realizes while she's with Colas that she's pregnant?
I would lose it. I would love that. Listen, that is, like people talk about, like, things that, like, they absolutely, that would, Like, okay, okay, if you have not read Empire Storms, get out, because I'm about to spoil something for you. Ready? Get out. Get out. You have like 5 seconds. I'll wave when I'm done. I'll wave. Okay. Okay. So like, I'm not gonna lie. Would not actually, in reality, I would not want this in the series. But listen, I'll take a fanfic. I kind of secretly wish that Aelin was pregnant when she was taken by Maeve. I'm not gonna lie.
It would have been so much more dramatic. I mean, it was dramatic, but like that would have been.
If there is one thing, and I think JLA has the potential to do a really good job with this, Sarah J. Maas, at some point in Throne of Glass, forgot about the politics of Dornell and the Whitethorns, and I always felt like if the Whitethorns knew that she was taken in that moment, it would have been, Maeve wouldn't even made it back home. Like, it would have been so bad because of the political alliances that they had within the city. And if Serafina was pregnant by taking my Colas, I would lose it. I would absolutely lose it. Okay, I'm gonna wave. You're good now. Okay, bye. Okay, you're good. Just saying.
It's for the angst and pain, Liv Rose. Angst and pain.
Why would you want your husband to go through that? Listen, with Rowan, it would be even better because he has trauma with pregnancy and babies. So, like, I genuinely want it. Okay. But yes, I think when it comes to Serafina and Nyktos, I would love to see them go through that because especially the way it was written in the War of Two Queens, it indicated to me that it happened pretty quickly after they met because I forget what Reaver says, but he said something and I was like, oh, this wasn't like they were together for a while and then she got pregnant. This was like she got pregnant pretty quick. So, I don't know. Yeah. It's questions. Okay. At what point do you think Nyktos and Sarah will reconcile? In this book or in the series?
So for me, on my reread, like I had been thinking that at the very end of the book, he was like still super upset with her. But on my reread, I realized like he was obviously upset with her through the siege and everything. And then, but once he like realized she has the Ember of Life in her, and then she brings Bailey back and ascends her.
Yeah.
He's kind of like, you can tell he's definitely like torn. Like he's kind of previously stated like you're just gonna be the consort, but you're just gonna be a figurehead. You're not actually gonna do anything. But he's definitely like very much torn. You could tell that he cares about her. He wants to protect her, but he's also not ready to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's going to be a full-on estrangement. Obviously, they don't have much time. So I feel like they're probably going to, like, fight and argue and have issues and maybe have some, like, angsty, spicy scenes. But I don't really see them as being, like... It's more like they need to work through their stuff with open communication. I'd rather have that.
So there is something that you find out about Nyktos within the first 5 chapters. And I think that is going to be more of the problem with their relationship than them having actual conflict.
Yeah.
Because men are stupid. That's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, men are stupid. That's very true.
Okay. This is a question for you. What chapter is the spicy balcony scene?
Let's see. I'm sure I wrote balcony in my notes. Hold on, I've got 3 different spots. Chapter 32. Can't sleep, goes on the balcony connected to her chamber, and Nyktos is on the daybed. Wink, wink. Good times.
32. There you go.
Checking out his tattoos.
Love that. Okay. Do you think we need to reread The War of Two Queens as needed before A Light in the Flame, or just read ASITE? So... I don't think you need to reread The War of Two Queens, but I think you need to have a good memory. Like, you need to remember what had happened in that book. And I think the key things in that book that we discovered was that Serafina is the primal of life and death. Mm-hmm. Nyktos just covers for one side of it. Reaver confirms that. And that Poppy should have never been born because there was a very clear stipulation about that. And... I think that was it. Like, most of it was very much about Poppy and Cass.
Yeah, I think like the stuff there, I really don't feel like we learn that much new stuff about the world in the War of Two Queens. Like it's more like the action book. Um, but I mean, just as a general rule, I personally would recommend reading everything in release order, at least the first time through till the series is done. And then I feel like you could totally read it like Flesh and Fire and then and Blood and Ash, but all the way through. And that will be interesting for like rereads in the future. I think it would be nice to just like read
I would agree.
Flesh and Fire as its own thing. But
I definitely think it's more...
I wouldn't kill yourself to read it now, but like...
Yeah, I think it's more important to be refreshed on A Shadow in the Ember than it is The War of Two Queens, but to remember what you had learned in The War of Two Queens leading up to A Light in the Flame.
Yeah.
Emma says, is Niktos pulling a Tamlin with a stone heart or something? I won't say it, but you're close. I mean, it's public, so like you can literally go read the chapters and find out for yourself.
The thing she's referring to is literally like I've only read the first chapter, and I read it like a month ago when they were released. I read the first chapter. It's at the end of the first chapter.
Okay, I'm gonna do 3 more questions, and then I have to hop off to talk about Empire of Storms. But favorite mortal peril scene from ASITE. This is hard for me, but I think I know. Which one is yours?
I mean, I don't know that. I love the initial like whipping scene with the brother and everything. I think that one. I mean, but I don't know that. I guess it was mortal peril that she was going to die. I think that was just like so dramatic, and it also pulled like a lot of parallels to Poppy and like the right. And I just, it was
a good one. My favorite was when she got attacked by the Giram because she passes out. I love a good pass out scene, so that's why I was like, so good. Okay, Smash. Well, this is an F Marry kill. Niktos, Castiel, Kieran.
I would definitely marry Niktos.
Yeah, same.
And I do like Castiel. I feel like based on things that happened in the War of Two Queens, I feel like this is an unfair question, and I should be able to say all of the above. I take all of the above. Thank you.
I feel like I can't. Well, okay, I'm going to be sneaky. I do the same thing when people ask me this for Sarah's characters. I'm going to say I would marry Kieran and I would sleep with Castiel because I can't separate the two of them. But I would kill Niktos because he's the primal of death and he'll come back to life and it's fine.
Well, I don't think you can kill him.
Exactly. That's why I, just sent. He's fine. He's the primal of death. We can't mess with that. There's my loophole. Okay. Oh, favorite Draken. Do you have a favorite?
I do love Nectus, but like Reaverbutt's so cute, and is what's her name? The little baby one. Jade. Yeah, she's been taken to being called Jade. She's so cute. Oh my god, when she like almost like tried to fly, and they're like, "Your wings aren't strong enough. You can't fly yet." I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I love them.
I think Reaver's my favorite. Reaverbutt's pretty cute, and Reaver was pretty cute, and I know that we weren't supposed to see him as cute in the War of Two Queens, but I did. I was like, "Oh, you little baby."
Yeah.
Okay, last thing. Do you think Seraphina will be pregnant in this book? It's the number one question.
If she is, I don't think it'll be until the end. Just because I feel like they've got a literal war probably to fight in the third book, but I want her to be. I would be happy with her being pregnant.
I want her to be pregnant. I'm like, believe me, I walked around a Polycon trying to get that answer. Like, I was is she pregnant?
I think it's something that would really separate it from a lot of fantasy because, I feel like people are so adamantly against, the pregnancy trope, but we, literally know that she has babies. So I feel like it's a cool opportunity to also, differentiate her from, the From Blood and Ash series where, we know that they don't, Poppy and Cass don't want kids right away. I honestly hope we don't even see them in the epilogues. I just, let them live for a few thousand years and figure their shit out. I think it's just a really cool opportunity to be able to show that. But I don't know if we'll be able to see it or not.
Yeah. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to bring up from the War of Two Queens is we find out that Colas has been underground, Poppy essentially awakens him. He's been also captured in some weird way. If I remember, it was something funky about Colas.
Well, Colas was at the end. He was like buried, and that was what all that big fighting and stuff was.
So why do I feel like Sarah looked this up already? Do you have it on Kindle yet? I don't have it on Kindle, and I'm not telling you if I looked it up. Not telling you.
Oh my god. Well, if anyone knows Sarah, y'all know she loves a good pregnancy trope.
I do
like that. This is not out of character.
No, it is not. There's like, listen.
But yeah, in the War of Two Queens, what you were saying with Colas, yeah, we learn in the War of Two Queens that he is obviously not actually dead. He's been like entombed or something. Yeah.
Yes.
Which that's like important to know at the end of this series, but.
Okay. Before we totally sign off, let me just check this. Okay, so it looks like our A Light in the Flame live is going from 9 to 10. So it's going to be 1 hour. So that is from 10 o'clock Eastern to midnight, or 11 o'clock. 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock on Eastern.
Oh, we're not staying on until it's up on Kindle?
No, we'll let y'all go to bed.
It's just been too much. Cool.
Listen, this,
it's killer. I can be on a live 3 times with you in the next, 5 days.
Can I tell you,
see my face?
No, I literally, people at work were like, what do you, because I was like rushing out the door and I was like, I'm working from home the next 2 days. And they're like, why? And I was like, I don't think you realize how chaotic my next 3 days are. And then you have, Avery's like, we're dying. We literally are dying. I genuinely looked at Avery and I was like, how much time is between Throne of Glass and ACOTAR? And she was like, a month. And I was like, great. I need like a year. Like, I don't.
Also holidays in there,
And it officially ends the last week of May. Like, we are going all the way to the last week of May.
We might need a spring break in there.
I honestly, there is quite a few little breaks. Like, we put more weeks between certain things.
Yeah.
Literally working on the playlist. The playlist takes forever. Thank God for JLA. She makes her own playlist, so whatever. But Sarah, can you start doing this, because this takes so long. And then I get picky. That's the other thing. I will admit, Avery knows this. I will listen to it and be like, that doesn't feel right. But we have the only thing, ironically, for anyone wondering, I do not have a song picked for the beach scene. Can't find one. I know. Actually, wait, that's not true. We did pick one. It's a troll. Spoiler alert, it's a troll. But anyways, okay, friends. Well, I'm going to let Kate get some rest. I'm going to go shove my face with food while I talk to Avery for the next 4 hours. So, but okay, bye everyone.